Fun. All right, cool. So this question here, it's from the 2015 HSC, which is the old syllabus actually, because the new one came in 2018, I think. There's two questions here. The first one is, I've changed it, compare the relative dating and absolute dating of fossils. The reason why I've changed it to compare is because our exam was a compare question. Spoiler alert, we didn't do too hot, right? Part of that is just because we need to understand what the verbs are asking of us. So actually in this question set, we have a compare and we have an evaluate, right? And I want us to learn how to answer these two types of questions with relation to the necessary verbs that we have, right? So it's a compare question. So can someone tell me, what do I have to do in a compare question? Yes, Natalie? Yeah, similarities and differences, right? So compare. What you might be tempted to do, or what we were tempted to do in the exam, was we just define these two terms, so define relative dating and define absolute dating, but we're asked to compare, which means we have to explicitly state the similarities and differences. And to do that, you probably should use some particular vocab. And what I mean by that is, well, if it's a similarity, you should probably get used to saying it's both blah, and differences however they differ by blah, right? So let's find something that they both do, right? What's something that both relative dating and absolute dating achieves? Yes, right? Yeah. So they're both used to estimate age of fossils. All right, what is the difference? Can someone tell me what's the difference? How are they different? One is it's not a yeah, okay. Yes, Angie?
One uses isotopes and the other uses the layers.
Yeah, okay, cool. So we can say there's difference in the method. What's another difference we can have? Accuracy. What about the accuracy? Do you want to build it? As in relative dating is more of an estimate and absolute dating is more precise? Yeah, okay, cool. So there's two differences here. We don't have to write both. Cool. Now, this is a 2-marker. So probably in an exam, I'm guessing it's 1 mark attributed to a similarity and 1 mark attributed to a difference. So you don't have to write both. Just pick one of the two to write, and that should get you 2 marks. But again, the reason why I did this today is just make sure when you're given a compare question to say similarities and differences. I think a lot of us naturally will talk about the differences, which is good, right? But we also have to say similarities. And I think a lot of people forget doing the similarities, right? So that's actually pretty important, even though it seems a bit throwaway and obvious. We just need to be explicit in our responses. Okay, now this next one. This one was a bit trickier. The question asked us to evaluate the student's conclusion with reference to the data presented, and this is the data here, and their conclusion is the data was conflicting and they could not determine the relative ages of the fossil, right? Before I break it down, does someone want to be like, hey, they're wrong or they're right? They're right, okay. Does anyone disagree / agree with Angie and his assessment?
I disagree.
Disagree? You think they're wrong? Okay, cool.
Is it because you can tell that the fossil sees the youngest one, the fossil pays the oldest through the hopper?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true, right? And that's something we can raise in our response, right? So the necessary verb here is to evaluate. Can someone tell me what we have to do when we're given an evaluate question? Yes, yeah, right, exactly. So in an evaluate question, you have to make a judgment. I'm going to break down the thing here. So let's look at this first diagram where we have relative dating. Now we know that in relative dating, the stuff at the top, generally we think is younger, and then we're just looking at the strata, right? And by strata, I mean layers. So actually, I'm going to annotate the layers. I might color code them. So this here, this is actually, so this is the first layer. I'm going to run out of colors. I should not do this. All right. This is the first layer. This is the second. Now the third layer is actually this layer. The fourth layer is this. The fifth layer is this. The sixth layer is this. And the seventh layer is this. Right? And I know this is confusing because we can see that in the strata, technically, if you're looking at depth, A is not as deep as B. Right? But if you're looking at the position of the folds in the strata, A comes in the fifth fold, whereas B is in the third. Right? Which actually means that even with the example of relative dating, B is still considered a younger sample than A. Right? Even though given the depth, that might be a bit misleading. Yeah? That's the first thing to note. And then, yeah, this second graph is very clear, right? C, B, A in terms of age, right? So we're given an evaluation question. It's actually worth 4 marks. That's quite a few marks. Now, on top of making our judgment in our evaluate, we have to provide reasons to support our judgment, right? So a few reasons, maybe 3 reasons, and then our concluding statement should get us 4 marks, right? So our first, oh no, what's happened? Our first statement, I could say, is, well, I'm going to try acknowledge both parts of the data here. This is a good thing to do. If you're given multiple sets of stimulus, so if you're given like 2 figures in any question, you should reference both of them in your response. Right? Even if you can get all the data you need from this figure, which you can, you shouldn't do that because the question's giving you two sets of data. You should analyze both sets of data, right? So I'm going to acknowledge the difficulty in relative dating for figure 1. So I'm going to say even though, despite fossil B being lower in depth than A, the strata, yes, that's good. Yeah, occurs earlier. I'll put it in the bracket. Cool, right? That could be one thing. Yep. Yeah, strata just refers to the layers. Yeah. And the reason why the layers are folded is just because, like, you know, rock gets pushed up over time, right? Which means that they're banded. Now, I'm going to keep talking about figure 1 because I want to make sure I have 3. I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that C is clearly the newest rock because it's very high up, right? So C, or fossil C is clearly the newest fossil as it is in the highest strata, right? Also fig 1. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start to link these two together because the student said that the data was conflicting, right? So I want to say that the data isn't conflicting. So I'm going to provide a reason for why what I see in B, or what I see in figure 1, is represented in figure 2, right? So I'm going to say this is shown in Fig 2 as C is the newest. And I'm going to again, right, remember with graphs we need to refer to the data numerically if possible, right? So the newest bracket, 1 half-life, then B, which has 3 half-lives, then A, which has 4 half-lives. Cool. Right. Right, now I just end with my judgment. Right, so I've provided my 3 reasons. I've linked them together to indicate that they are not conflicting, and I've also explicitly referenced points or data points in the graph. Right, so I've kind of hit my criteria for the question. I just need to make my judgment. So I'm just going to say, therefore, the student's conclusion is not correct. Is incorrect. The data is not conflicting. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.